And away we go. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you happen to be in the world today. Welcome, one and all, to Coffee Talk. Coffee Talk live on YouTube. And that is, you can find me on YouTube at Coffee Talk Live or at Prepper University. Simultaneously broadcasting at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is where the live portion takes place, as well as at Coffee Talk Chat on Twitter, or X, formerly known as Twitter. Try to keep that straight. And of course, Fistful of Radio, fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta, where you can find Coffee Talk Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon. As we get ready to dive in to the news, what is going on in the world today, we're going to take a look at some things you may know and some things maybe you haven't seen. And of course, I'll give my snarky, sarcastic take on everything because it's all ridiculous, isn't it? It's all absolutely ridiculous. They feed us a bunch of lies and half-truths, and they equivocate and they trim this off and they add that, and they think we're all stupid. And to be fair, most people are not that smart, but we're not all that dumb either. As I get ready to acknowledge some of the people that are joining us in the live portion. And of course, if you are listening and not watching, I do read as many of the comments as is reasonable, just so that you can follow along with the conversation. And I'll go ahead and say hi to some of the people who have joined us here today. I see Helter is here with us, Dragon, Anarchy is here, Urban Angst, Keisha, Boogers is here, Bingo, Frankie M has joined us thus far, or has chimed in to say hello, to greet us as we get ready to take a look at what's going on. No cats. Sorry, there's no cats in the room. I had 3 yesterday. Now I have none. They're all asleep in random places around the house or on the back porch. And I'm still caring for 10 of them, 5 inside and 5 outside. And there might be a couple more added. We're going to see. We're working on it. We're working on something. As again, we get ready to jump into the news and see what is going on in the world today. And one more, I see that D-Lo has joined us. Glad you could make it today. And here we go. We're going to jump right to the migrant crisis, of course, because it is a crisis. It is an invasion. It has become the migrant industrial complex because there is huge money in it, huge tax money being dumped into all of this. This particular article is from the Daily Mail, and it says the Biden administration has been ordered to stop removing razor wire at the border in Texas after a record 14,000 illegal migrants crossed within a 24-hour period, and with agents warning of a collapse in security. That's already been collapsed. That's already long gone, border agents, I'm sorry to say. You lost that fight a year ago, at least. And it's more than 14,000. It's closer to 15, their estimates. And that's just the ones that they processed, not the ones who slipped away. It says a U.S. appeals court on Tuesday blocked the federal government from dismantling the barrier along the Mexico border that was installed to deter migrants. Because you remember, Texas keeps putting the barriers up, and then another division under the Biden administration's direct orders have been going down there and pulling the barriers down after they're erected. And that can't keep going on. Plus, it's expensive. The ruling is temporary in the battle between Texas and the federal government over enforcing the border that saw a record 14,000 crossers encountered on Tuesday. And I believe that's at the Eagle Pass. Governor Greg Abbott ramped up his war with the White House earlier this week by giving Texas law enforcement the power to detain and deport migrants who illegally cross the border. Tuesday's ruling gives him a victory in the back and forth with the federal government, which claims it has authority over border policy, which technically it does. The New Orleans-based 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals said a judge was wrong to rule that the U.S. Oh, good Lord, hold still. Well, your government was immune from a lawsuit by Texas claiming a federal policy of removing the fencing was illegal. The court ordered U.S. immigration authorities not to destroy the fencing, pending the outcome of Texas's appeal of the judge's ruling, which has dismissed the case. And there's a little video snippet here, and you see the crowd here waiting to get through. There's thousands of people there. And again, that is Eagle Pass right there. That's what it looks like on the other side of the fence. And as is pointed out here, you see 130,000 in November and 160,000 in December. And I believe that number has already jumped to 200,000 for December, crossing across the entire southern border, I believe. Goes on here, I am very pleased the appellate court has forbidden federal agents sent by the Biden administration from destroying our concertina with wire fences, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton said on Tuesday, given the ongoing disaster at the southern border due to the federal government's international actions, more than ever it's necessary to take every step we can to hold the line, he said. Yeah, but they're still being let in. Oh, and only thing that they're doing for redirection is sending them out of Texas because Texas is too overrun for them to be able to maintain any of these people any further. They're being shipped out all over the country now when they should be shipped back to where they came from. And I see Ragnar Thorshammer has joined us here today. And Keisha says need to put the wall up. Also, they can probably get over that too. Yeah, but at least it'd be a deterrent. But again, the real deterrent would be sending them back, rejecting them. So sorry, not trying to be cruel, but we don't have the room and we can't afford you. We can't afford to take care of you. Here's a meal and a ticket back home. That's the best we can do for you. But most of these people wouldn't be coming here again if they haven't been invited. They've been invited to come here. This has already been exposed. The Biden administration has put out the word, come on down. We'll take care of you. And for the most part, they're being taken care of, so much so that they don't even appreciate what they do have. As we talked about in one of the articles yesterday, a big pet peeve of mine, they won't even eat the free food. They're being given 3 meals a day, and they're throwing it away because they don't like the way it tastes, or it's not hot enough, or some kind of complaint. Must be nice. I thought you were starving refugees crawling for 3,000 miles on your bellies, begging for help, and you're offered help and you piss on it. It's not good enough for you. Dragon says border enforcement is like the most basic practice of every nation. I don't see an issue. Yeah, it's not an issue if it's actually enforced, which it's not being done right now. Cruising says that they put the energy into being prosperous and productive back home that they put into coming here, they'd live like kings. Maybe. And Spectre says he's here. Who did what? Well, they've ordered that the fencing and other deterrents that Texas has put up, the Biden administration doesn't have the right to keep pulling down, which they'll probably still do. Also, you remember yesterday that Biden offered to actually try and do something about the border if they allow him to give the $61 billion to the Ukraine, because you remember Congress voted that down. He did not get enough of a vote for it to pass, and Ukraine didn't get their $61 billion. And Voldemort came all the way down here to cry and beg to Congress again because he wasn't going to get his money. You recall that's been going on the last couple of weeks. So he said, "Oh well, I'll limit it to $1 million a year if you give Ukraine the $61 billion." And it's like, that's still too much. That's still too much. You know, that's like 2,500, 3,000 people a day, right? I mean, seriously. No, Biden. How about no? How about you limit it to like 200 people a day and you send no money to the Ukraine because that's not going to help. Spectre says they're here for a free ride. And if they did that, it would ride the long road, then over time be forgotten. But that's what's going on in Texas. They're being overrun. Again, Eagle Pass, 14,000 plus, close to 15,000 people in 24 hours. I mean, they're breaking records every other day with border crossings. And those, again, those are just the ones that people know about because they're the ones that were vetted. They're the ones that went through a gate instead of sneaking in. And there's skirmishes going on. There's booby traps. There's bombs going off. There's shootouts going on because cartels are muling through all of this chaos at the same time. So these Border Patrol agents are playing social worker on one hand and getting into gun battles on the other. Those gun battles are hardly being reported on. And Spectre says they're in Texas. Then you might be seeing a lot of this depending upon how close to the border you are. As we shift around here, we're still in Texas, and this is Associated Press. This next article says Texas begins flying migrants from southern border to Chicago. The first plane carried over 120 people. And I kind of predicted that because you remember last week, Chicago started impounding the buses that were coming from Texas and charging like a $3,000 fee or some kind of nonsense. And it's basically, and I'm like, does Texas own those buses or are they chartered buses? If they're chartered buses, you're just hurting the chartering company, but you're also intimidating the chartering company out of taking any more contracts from Texas, which is kind of the idea. And I said, watch, they'll start putting them on planes now. There you go. I called it. I'd like to see Chicago. No, I do not want to do that. I'd like to see Chicago impound planes. You're going to start impounding Delta aircraft. He could put them on Amtrak too, because you can't impound a train either. When you're talking planes and trains, you're talking federal jurisdiction. They can't stop or impound or impede those vehicles. So here we go. Texas sent a plane with more than 120 migrants from the U.S.-Mexico border to Chicago in an escalation of Republican Governor Greg Abbott's busing operation that has given more than 80,000 migrants free rides to Democratic-led cities across the country since last year. The first flight, which Abbott's office said left from El Paso and arrived Tuesday, was arranged a week after Chicago City Council took new action over the busloads of migrants that have drawn sharp criticism from Mayor Brandon Johnson. The city has said bus operators began trying to drop off people in neighboring cities to avoid penalties that includes fines, towing, and impoundment. Bus operators could now face tougher penalties in Chicago for not unloading new arrivals at designated locations or failing to fill out city paperwork. Abbott spokesman Andrew Mahaleras said Wednesday that the flights were the result of Johnson targeting migrant buses from Texas. Yes, that's exactly what that is. Also, again, you're fining bus drivers too. The bus driver is just doing his job. You hired him to drive to Chicago and you're going to fine him for taking the contract? That's pretty dirty, Abbott. That's pretty dirty. But again, I don't know who's chartering those buses, if they're owned by Texas, if it's a busing company. I'm not clear on that. I figured this would be the next step, though, to escalate things. Because like I said, you're not going to, it's federal regulation now that you're dealing with. You can't sit there and say, no, you need to go to another state and land there. It's kind of too late. And you can't impound an aircraft unless you are the federal government. And ARN is here. He says they're bugging out from from their crummy countries. Why can't the millions unite and go back and change their countries? Because they're scared. Plus, they're getting a handout in America. And Raccoon is here. Says, why are they flying them to other states instead of back where they came from? Yet because, again, they're not allowed to repatriate them, which is the politically correct term for it. We used to repatriate them. We used to put them on buses and planes all the time and send a lot of these people back where they came from if they weren't legitimate asylum seekers and passed the checks and filled out the paperwork and whatever. The Biden administration said, come one, come all. You're not allowed to reject anybody at all anymore. That's why. But that's what we used to do. That was the whole process. We'd send as many back as we possibly could. Since we can't, the only thing you can do when you've reached your absolute saturation limit of illegals filling your state, you got to send them somewhere else. And what better place to send them to than to the cities of lawmakers that are partially responsible for what's going on. Spectre says other countries do check on who comes in the country. It comes in practice. There is no legitimate reason why we don't do the same thing, and it's in the U.S. law to do so, unless the president overrides that. And John is here. He says, hello, everyone. Frankie M. said, then they will deny landing approval and redirect the plane somewhere else. But there's only so far that plane can be redirected to. It may not land in Chicago, but it's going to land somewhere in Illinois. Helter says this is usually done as political theater because border states like to argue the northern blue states don't take in their share of undocumented immigrants. And then All People says Abbott is not a good guy. He's helping the Democrat cities, regions to become even more powerful through more congressional representation by sending migrants to those areas. And Dragon says it's not my problem anymore when truckloads of illegal aliens start showing up at your front door. Sanctuary cities feel good posturing is coming right back to bite them. And then Keisha said, I heard something concerning migrants called catch and release. Is that releasing them back to your country of origin or what? No, catch and release means that they catch you and then they send you. Well, it used to be catch and release is they catch you, they put you in holding, and then they'd send you back where you came from, or at least somewhere deep south. Now catch and release is they catch you and they process you somewhat, and then they release you into the interior of the United States. Merv says we cannot allow the courts to give them the illegitimate right to vote in our elections. State legislators set the rules for elections. And Gary's here. Gary Edwards says, hello, Christmas homies. Oh, Gary is taking us all the way back to the 80s. And ARN says taxes, we get taxed. The tax system from their countries must be much different. Maybe they come from villages without electricity, then they are not taxed, question mark. I don't know. I don't know, but it is a major burden on the taxpayers of the United States to have to keep dealing with this. And there's another aspect of this that is hurting the United States. Here's an article you won't see on the migrant crisis. And this is important. This is important. Pet peeve of mine coming right up. Hold on. One more from Cruising. It says, when the Japanese said they wouldn't invade over the behind every blade of grass reason, it's a damn good thing they didn't know all they had to do was pretend to be refugees. Well, at that time, it wouldn't have been permitted because remember, they were rounding up Germans, Japanese, and Italians and putting them in internment camps. Remember, it wasn't just the Japanese that were rounded up, but I totally get your point there. Here we go, the Independent News. U.S. borders full of migrants litter, and conservatives are calling environmentalists to speak up because you're not hearing about this at all. It's a trash heap all along the border because these people, they just throw their trash everywhere. They urinate and defecate everywhere. They leave a lot of garbage behind. They start fires. This is not being talked about at all. And remember, many of these people are coming from cultures where that's normal. That's normal. Just throw your trash anywhere. Who cares? Crap anywhere. Who cares? Article goes on. The U.S. borders are full of litter, and conservatives are asking where the environmentalists are speaking up about this problem. Furthermore, environmental groups are always emphasizing on the fact that we need to use paper straws rather than focusing on other issues that could be solved in a swift manner. Never use a paper straw. They're toxic. I'm telling you, they are. Again, when I worked for Frito-Lay, we were required to wear gloves when handling boxes, because if you handle the boxes too often, there's toxic chemicals in the cardboard that'll absorb into your skin. It can cause problems. And basically, a paper straw is actually cardboard, and it's made through the same chemical process, and you're absorbing water into it and ingesting that. Can't be good for you. It really can't. Plus, they taste like garbage. Daily Caller states the federally protected borderland in Arizona is overwhelmed by waste and human excrement due to an influx of illegal migrants, as revealed in photos and Border Patrol accounts. The Oregon Pipe National Monument housing endangered species witnesses migrants awaiting law enforcement and lacking bathrooms. The area is littered with discarded documents and waste, reeking of excrement, posing health risks. Former ICE Director John Fabricatori, if I'm pronouncing that right, called it an environmental crisis. Blaming the Biden administration's immigrant failure, the Border Patrol in Tucson had to halt operations amid a surge, creating resource shortages. Migrants wait for days without facilities, turning the desert into a makeshift restroom. The House passed a bill to prevent migrant housing on federal lands, addressing concerns about the Biden administration's actions, and CBP and the National Park Service have yet to respond to the situation. And here you see a little bit of a video clip of it walking through the woods here. This is what it looks like. Do you see this? I don't know if I can expand this image. Hold on, maybe I can. There you go. This is what it looks like all along the border. Where's the outcry from environmental groups? That's a great question. But you're not hearing about this at all. This is not in the news. All the trash. It looks like a lot of clothing, soda bottles, food wrappers. It's unacceptable. Unacceptable. As I catch up a few comments here. Spectre says resources, housing, medical power usage, and they don't contribute anything back. They take nothing more. And Gary Smith said paper straws are toxic, but what to do in a country that has made plastic illegal like Canada? I don't know. I guess drink straight out of the glass. I'm so sorry. But yeah, you shouldn't. I do not recommend the use of paper straws at all. I really don't. Plus, they like I said, they taste like crap. They taste awful, anyways. But yeah, the process to make cardboard puts toxic chemicals into it. You're drinking it and ingesting that. So over, once or twice probably is okay, but over and over again, I could see it creating a problem. Raccoon said, wow, that's crazy. ARN says, bet most of the clothes are cotton. And Cruising said, the sheer volume of trash is absolutely ridiculous for people who are coming here because they have nothing. Good point. Bingo says they're disgusting animals. Well, most people are. Watch Hoarders sometime. Spectre says they're hanging their clothes on razor wire. Yeah, you hang the clothes on the razor wire so that you can crawl over it. It's supposed to cushion the razor wire or block the cutting. Keisha says, are they trashing places in the U.S. where they're staying? Yes, Keisha, they are. They are trashing the areas where they are as well, because it's in many countries they're not sanitary in that regard. Trash goes on the ground. Trash goes on the street. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Raccoon says that's an insult to the animals. At least they bury their crap. Yeah, that's true. That is true. And Frankie says animals are actually cleaner. In most cases, animals are cleaner than people. Trust me, I know. Animals can be a lot cleaner and a lot more sanitary, just like anything else that humans are or do. Because I talk about this a lot about the human condition, about how humans are instinctively cruel and mean and nasty and rude and selfish and dishonest. You have to want to be better than that, because that's the natural instinct of the human animal, is just be a pig, basically. And, that's insulting pigs in some regard. You have to want to be better than that. You have to want to be honest. You have to want to be clean. You have to want to be nice. You have to desire that in yourself and project that and change, and you will change. But people are also naturally unsanitary. They don't care about anything. You have to want to be clean. You have to want to clean your clothes. You have to want to bathe. You have to want to brush your teeth. There's a lot of people, they don't want to do it. They don't bother, or they don't do it properly. So yeah, they're filthy animals, and in many regards, your average animal is a lot more sanitary. Helter says the environmentalists don't see anything financially viable by engaging in the migrant littering game. Yeah, because you can't get any money out of them. And Cruising says, I carry glass straws for my own use. They make metal ones too. The glass ones have metal tubes. You can carry them in. Okay. Yeah, I've seen the stainless steel or the titanium straws. I didn't know they were using glass ones that way. Keisha says, I know a lot of the South Americans don't like the Mexicans. They call them dirty Mexicanos. And Gary says, is illegal immigration being purposely allowed, or is it incompetence? I think it can only be this bad by design. A combination of both, I think, Gary. It is being weaponized against America by many of the South American states, because they know if they keep pushing them this way, it'll hurt us. And there are many regions of South America that have a grudge against the United States for a variety of reasons. So they're weaponizing them by pushing them here. There is an agenda. Also, enforcing a collapse within the United States from the government's perspective gives them a mess to clean up. And they can use that against the citizenry. More taxes, more regulations, more laws, more control. And yeah, incompetence too. Incompetence by way of thinking, having the arrogance to believe that they can control it once they get the ball in motion. Oh, we'll do all of this and we'll be able to reap the rewards with more taxes and regulations and laws, and we'll control everyone. No, the hell you won't. You're going to lose control of it eventually. And Gary Smith said, push the like button, folks. Thank you, Gary. Much appreciated. I'll take all the thumbs up I can get. And Spectre says, amnesty is coming. Mark my words. And Gary Edwards wants to know, when will it be the last straw? Only time will tell. I don't want to make any predictions, but it looks pretty bad. It looks pretty bad. And, between throwing money all over the world and throwing money into all of these problems, all the problems that are being created through the migrant industrial complex, which is all tax money. It's our money that is taken from us by force and distributed without our consent to things that we would not approve of, instead of taking care of things that we actually need, repairing roads, proper education instead of social indoctrination. I could go on and on. There's so many better things that the money could be used for. And if they got away from wasting money overseas and giving it away to all these countries to bribe them or coerce them or to try to prove a point, and got away from funding all these immigrants that are flooding the country that should be sent home. Again, it'd be cheaper to send them back. I'll say it 100,000 times until somebody hears it, that it matters, instead of just preaching to the choir. They wouldn't, if it was properly spent and managed, they wouldn't need half the tax money they take from us. And Nathan says, reminds me of the Joaquin Phoenix version of the Joker, only at the beach. Cruising said, side note, 70% fail rate this semester. Oh, and again, for those of you who are not aware, cruising works in the public school system. 70% fail rate this semester, complete refusal to engage or complete something as simple as writing single word answers. I know you don't like public education, but something's up with the students. The students have realized now, after the whole distance learning that we went through a couple of years there, they've realized for sure, one, they're wasting their time in school, and two, it's not going to be enforced. There's no repercussions. If anyone is going to take a hit, it's going to be their parents, and since most of them don't get along with their parents anyways, they don't care. But it's finally sunk in. Even when I was in school, I realized I was wasting my damn time. That's why I got my GED in the 10th grade. It's like, what am I doing here? I figured it out in junior high. First year of junior high. This is worthless. And that was in the 80s. How bad is it now? But a large majority of students now have realized, yeah, it's a waste of time. I'm not really learning anything. And hell, these people aren't going to enforce it anyway. So who gives a shit? Who gives a shit? Why bother to do it? Spectre says digital ID and currency. And I see Adrian is here. He says 0% US dollar. And Semperfi says, hello, everyone. Hope you're all safe and are mentally and physically doing good. Yes, indeed. And Spectre says that was a reply to the last straw. Oh, I see. Digital and ID currency will be the last straw. Very, very good. Frankie says, how about digging a moat and filling it with sewage and let them cross that? That's what Iran would do. No, Egypt. I'm sorry. It was Egypt. We talked about that before when we were discussing how Israel is flooding the Hamas tunnels with seawater, and they were being charged with war crimes. Oh, it's a war crime. It's inhumane. How dare you? And I'm like, Egypt did that with raw sewage to their tunnel system in like 2013, right? Imagine being drowned in liquid excrement. How's that for inhumane and a war crime? Gary says, have you seen the Rio Grande lately? I don't believe so. I don't believe so. And Cruising said, use a dry moat. We don't have enough water to waste in the Southwest. Well, we could just move some crocodiles down to the river there. That might help. That might help. And speaking of government overreach, while we're on the subject of government overreach, I'm sure many of you have seen this story by now. This will never pass. It can't possibly, because it'd open up too big of a can of worms. And this article comes from, where does it come from? Atlanta News First. Okay, so it's a local article, but it's about something that's going on in New York. New bill would require Chick-fil-A to be open on Sunday. And it says, New York, any Chick-fil-A fan knows the chicken chain is closed on Sundays. It's a practice that's been in place since Chick-fil-A first opened in Georgia in 1946, which is why Atlanta News is talking about this. But now a bill has been introduced in New York that could affect Chick-fil-A locations at rest stops along Interstate 90 in New York State. The new bill would require food services at transportation facilities and rest areas to remain open 7 days a week. The bill goes on to say that while there is nothing objectionable about a fast food restaurant closing on a particular day of the week, service areas dedicated to travelers is an inappropriate location for such a restaurant. Allowing for retail space to go unused 1/7 of the week or more is a disservice and unnecessarily inconvenient to travelers who rely on these service areas. And there is no comment from Chick-fil-A. So what this is even though it's local government, because you're talking about the state of New York, trying to impose procedures on a private company, which is bad news. it's bad news, period. Whatever the reason is for Chick-fil-A closing on Sunday, they cite a religious reason. Fine. But if that company chooses to be open or closed on a certain day or at certain times, should entirely be up to that company and should not be regulated by the state. It opens the door for them to butt their noses in on all sorts of other things that companies do within their jurisdiction. They already interfere enough with licenses and fees and regulations and inspections without doing something like this. I cannot see this passing. I cannot see this passing. And I'm not a fan of Chick-fil-A because Chick-fil-A flip-flopped after that whole alphabet mafia agenda when they had their Chick-fil-A Appreciation Day because they took a stand against the gay mafia. And that Wednesday they had record sales, lines out the door. You were waiting 2 hours to get into Chick-fil-A. And then the alphabet mafia tried to retaliate by having a gay kiss in Chick-fil-A Day, where they would photograph you doing that, and nobody showed up for it. Almost nobody. There was a couple of pictures that went out, but nobody wanted to bother because, once again, they don't even support each other within their own community. But here we go. A couple more comments here. Frankie says crocodile, sharks, and piranhas. And Gary Edwards says there's enough toxins in the Rio Grande that pregnant women living near it give birth to babies born without brains. This is very old news. That sounds familiar, actually, now that you say it. Medical High is here. He says it won't be the only last straw. It will be the shortest straw. When World War III starts, some will get the short straw to be taken for draft. Russia has 1.3 million active duty soldiers. And yeah, Ukraine is drafting people in their 30s and 40s now. Semper Fi says, yep, they want Chick-fil-A to be open on the thruway. The state just spent millions of taxpayer dollars to renovate rest stops. They didn't need it. And the thing is, too, if that does pass, what's Chick-fil-A going to do? If they stand their ground, they'll just pull out. And if they pull out of the restaurant stops, they may as well pull out of the whole state, which we've seen businesses do recently because of over-regulations and high taxes in New York. Because Remington just pulled out, didn't they? A few weeks ago. They're closing all their New York plants. Helter says if New York prevails in claiming that any establishment in their service plaza has to be open 7 days and CFA is forced to move out of the service plazas, then that is a lot of money on the hook. Yeah, a lot of tax money that they're going to lose out on. Raccoon says Hobby Lobby also closes on Sundays. That's right. And Semper Fi says the deal was agreed to 2 years ago before renovations were even started. And Dragon says, given my firsthand experience with Chick-fil-A, they would likely rather leave those locations than be forced to compromise. I hope they would. I hope they would stand their ground for whatever the reason. And Merv says when they stop the freebies, that's when the party begins. And Paul says, okay, dad joke, what do you call a cow with 2 legs? Lean beef. Yes, there you go. Stay lean and God bless. Yes, indeed. You know what, though? Please don't call it a dad joke, Paul. You know why? That's a modern rephrasing of a pun. That type of joke is called a pun, but in the last few years, they started calling it dad jokes, and I think it's an attack on the concept of males and masculinity. And WCM said, afternoon, glad you could make it, WCM. And Spectre says, your thought on my last comment. Where was your last comment? Did I lose track? Because I saw you said employment. The last comment I saw from, I think that's the right one, Spectre. Where are you? Let me look up here. Did you have a comment pulled off? The last 2 I see from you. Oh, digital ID and currency. Is that what your last comment was? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, digital ID and currency will push a lot of people over the limit, quite frankly. People like having cash. People like operating with cash. They like having the option of cash. But and he says no. Spectre, a comment must have been removed then. And Gary says bull with no legs, ground beef. Shame on you, Gary. You sound like Peabody now. You know, Sherman and Peabody. Because Peabody used to tell a lot of puns at especially at the end of the episode, and then Sherman would go, "Oh no, Mr. Peabody, please don't," and then he'd complete the pun. Cruising says people like cash because strippers get angry when you try to swipe a card. There you go, Cruising. There you go. We like our cash. We like using cash in the United States. A lot of countries like it. That's why you see the digital currency, their attempts to enforce it are in these really crappy third world, middle of nowhere places where the people there, they're really not going to have much of a choice. But yeah, Americans, they won't like that. I mean, they like it. They like the convenience of being able to swipe the card. Everybody's using the damn kiosks and the self checkouts and everything, but they still like having that cash. They really do. As we bounce around here, we're going to bounce all the way. I think this is San Francisco they're going to be talking about. And one more here from Cruising real quick. It says, in truth, though, handling cash makes your expenses real, so you think about how much things cost. Yeah, there's that too. But they try to frighten you away from it. Oh, cash has germs. Cash is what criminals and drug dealers use. Whatever, bite me. This article is the Business Insider, and this is a loaded article. I'm going to tell you right now. Okay, I can tell just reading the title. It says $750 a month was given to homeless people in California. What they reported spending it on is more evidence that universal basic income works. Does it? Let's see what they have to say about it, and then I'll tell you my thoughts. The newly released results of the first 6 months of the study on the impact of basic income and social support intervention shows how the recipients spent the influx of cash. The findings appear to be the latest piece of evidence showing the benefits of basic income plans. The study found that after 6 months, those who received the $750 monthly stipend were less likely to report being unsheltered and said they were closer to having enough money to meet all of the basic needs compared with a control group of people who accessed usual homeless services. The study conducted by the San Francisco nonprofit Miracle Message, and that place, Miracle Messages, it's Miracle Messages, right? They're very much under the thumb of the government there. And the University of Southern California, Suzanne Dvorak Peck School of Social Work also found that those receiving the $750 stipend reported spending the highest share, 36.6% on food in the first 6 months. Participants on average reported spending nearly 20% on housing, 12.7% on transportation, 11.5% on clothing, 6.2% on healthcare, 13.6% on other expenses that were not classified, the study finds. Okay, so they're using this. And by the way, the study is a 100-person control group. 100% control group. It says he told the Times only 2% of the $750 a month was spent on alcohol, cigarettes, or drugs. The majority of that was cigarettes. So you have a 100-person control group that you handpicked to give $750 a month to, no questions asked, even though there's a survey attached. You've only done this for 6 months, okay? And you have not verified what they spent the money on. You took their word for it in the survey. And this is supposed to prove that universal income works. Did I miss anything? Gary Edwards says universal basic in stank. And Cruising says, how about they just reduce the tax burden for everyone by the same amount they would give us for UBI? UBI 12K a year. My taxes go down by 12 a year. Don't make enough to benefit, work more. Yeah, how about that? Helter says American companies will just raise the prices to negate the overall basic income. In essence, this is welfare, not universal income. Gary says meet your basic needs with 750. What third world country is that? Yeah, and then there's weird stuff like what was it? Oh, it bounced all the way to the bottom of the page here. It's trying to keep me from moving. Something like 12.6% was spent on 12.7% on transportation, 11.5 on clothing, 6.2% on healthcare. Those people get free healthcare anyways. I don't see how that's even possible. 20% on housing. So where have they get housing? We're 20%. So you spent $150 on housing. That's inconceivable. Dragon says 100 people. Who were they? Yeah, here, that's my argument. Here we go. Who were they and how were they selected? Were they the average homeless person on the edge of being homeless? Feels pretty presumptuous to say that it works based upon this data. And then Spectre says a Mexico-U.S. Conal from the west coast to the Gulf of Mexico is what's needed. 3 birds with 1 stone: employment, better shipping, and harder to get across. But yeah, again, that is a very controlled circumstance. You have 100 people. That's not a lot. Do you mean canal, Spectre? A Mexico-U.S. canal from the west coast to the Gulf of Mexico. I see. Yeah. Is that what you were talking about before that got removed? So you have 100 people handpicked in a control group. You only gave it 6 months. You interviewed them and took their word for how the money was spent. You don't even know if it's accurate. And this is supposed to be proof that universal basic income is going to work. Yeah, I totally trust that. I totally trust that. Robert says on a legal site, I am on dozens of articles of FBI, DHS, USMS. The last year spending millions on cell sites, SIMs for data collection over cities. It's not just for immigrant location anymore. It was probably never intended for that in the first place. But yeah, the money will get spent that way. And Marina says most pressing concern is personal health. Make sure to have medical support available that you can fully trust. Yeah. Have first aid kits in your home. Have medical support or know where you can find medical. If you're on medications, if it's reasonable for you to do so, find alternatives now. I'm not on any medication. I don't recommend medication, but I am not a doctor, so I can't tell you to not take your meds. But I don't trust medication. I don't trust shots or any of that kind of stuff. A canal from the west coast to the Gulf of Mexico. I mean, it might help as a deterrent, provided that it doesn't create an environmental hazard. Because there's the potential for that, Spectre. There's a potential for that. But yeah, dig a canal and create that separation. That's interesting. That's an interesting idea. Gary Edwards says it's landlords and Walmarts and liquor companies that are on welfare. Liquor companies, huh? Where's my welfare check? Where's mine? I want my welfare check. I want my free money. Semper says regarding medical, check with your state for free Narcan spray. Just got 2 in the mail. You never know if you'll need it. Interesting. As we shimmy around here, and this is another one from the Associated Press we'll get to here in a moment. Keisha wants to know if I believe in childhood immunizations. No, I don't trust that stuff. And I've talked about that before, that even my immunization record, I think the last shot recorded is like 1971 or 1972, and there's only like 5 things on there. And I would have refused that if I could have then. But yeah, I don't trust that. We don't know what this stuff is. You got kids that are, by the time they're 10, they're up to 50 shots or something now. And there's a lot of heavy metals and other weird stuff in there. You don't know what the side effects are. Have you seen food allergies anywhere else but other than Western countries? Why do you think that is? There's a lot of concerns. I would have a lot of concerns. I don't trust shots. Again, I can't tell you not to immunize your kids, but personally, I don't like it. I don't trust it. If I had another kid, I wouldn't do it. I would not do it. And Gary wants to know how you're going to dig a canal through the Rockies. And Gary Edwards says touching fentanyl contaminated items while in public is a present danger. That's one of the excuses they have for trying to get you, how they get you to trying to convince you that cash is unsafe because it might have fentanyl on it and you'll get sick. And Frankie says, let the kids eat dirt, natural immunity. Yeah, mud pies, Frankie. Let them eat mud pies. And WCM says helping people to get better is bad for business. Yeah, if they're not sick, you can't sell them anything. You can't sell them anything. If they get sick from a shot, then they have to take a medication for that, and the medication has side effects that you need more pills for. And you make them codependent on a bunch of chemicals that make them sicker all the time. And Adrian is here, says good afternoon. Glad you could make it. And Eric Peter also. He says I always doubted getting my pets their shots. Yeah, no kidding. And if there's a side effect that your pet is suffering from, they can't tell you. They can't tell you. It won't manifest until God knows when, if you can even identify it and don't think it's something else. Seriously. I don't trust that either. Well, Associated Press here says states are trashing troves of masks and pandemic gear as huge costly stockpiles linger and expire. Yeah, a lot of your tax money was wasted on purchasing bunny suits, they used to call them, the hazmat suits, and gloves and masks and solutions and eye coverings and things like that. And they're expiring. And they're going to have to be thrown away after all your money was wasted. It says when the C virus pandemic took hold in an unprepared U.S., many states like Ohio, and they're going to focus on Ohio specifically here, scrambled for masks and other protective gear. Supplies were so limited in 2020 that the state bought millions of medical gowns from a marketing and printing company and spent about $20 million to try to get personal protective equipment made in the state. So they invested $20 million in manufacturing it themselves and spent other tens of millions of taxpayer dollars stockpiling. And here you see cases in a warehouse of hospital gowns that are never going to get used as a result. 3 years later, as the grips of the pandemic have loosened, or have the grips of the pandemic truly loosened, or have the grips of the laws and regulations enforced on us loosened? Because I don't think it was ever that bad. Ohio and other states are now trying to deal with an excess of protective gear, ditching the supplies in droves, with expiration dates passing and few requirements to tap into the stockpile, or requests rather. Ohio auctioned off 393,000 gowns for $2,451 and ended up having to throw away another $7.2 million worth, along with expired masks, gloves, and other materials. The now expiring supplies had cost about $29 million in federal tax money. A similar reckoning is happening around the country. Items are aging, and as a deadline to allocate federal C virus cash approaches next year. States must decide how much to invest in maintaining warehouses and supply stockpiles. An Associated Press investigation found that at least 15 states, from Alaska to Vermont, have tossed some of their trove of PPE because of expiration, surpluses, and lack of willing takers. In the trash went more than 18 million masks, 22 million gowns, 500,000 gloves, and more. That's not counting states that didn't give the AP exact figures or responded in cases of other measurements. They're not telling you the whole truth here. Reading between the lines on this, basically, because, I mean, seriously, expiration dates on cotton and latex. Do you really think hospital gowns expired? But what is expiring is the deadline for getting more federal money for C virus planning. If they say it's expired and throw it away or auction it off, they have to replace it, and they'll need the money to do it. Spend it or lose it is what this is. Spend it or lose it. And that's your money. That's your money they're throwing away. Helta says, I can't help but think that if we've been allowed to have honest, constructive conversations about the C word instead of turning it into a political battle, some of the waste could have been avoided. Absolutely. And you know how much trouble I've gotten in for even discussing it. I was warned not to even talk about it, which is why I still to this day say C virus. Cruising says expiring just in time for C virus 2024. Yeah, because they'll have to get federally allocated money and buy it all over again. Robert says years ago, had a cat get vaxxed, and for the rest of his life, he had a crook in his neck to the right from the shot. Never trust that or hearts. Interesting. Thanks for the tip. Nathan says, I've seen a meme where one person says, I got the shot. I did the research, to which the other replies, bro, you were the research. Yeah, we're the guinea pigs this time. And Dragon says, awfully convenient that there's no present environmentalist activists clamoring for the curtailing of all this waste. Yeah, that's a ton of waste. A waste of raw material, a waste of tax money. And again, cotton gowns, cotton masks, latex gloves. Do they really expire? You tell me. Frankie says, but instead of sending these to places like the Red Cross, etc., that they can use this equipment, they rather dump it. The Red Cross doesn't want that. They want that federal money too. They're probably also throwing that stuff away, Frankie. Gary Edwards says, homeless can wear hospital gowns, easier to defecate on the sidewalk. Oh, no. Yeah, send them to San Francisco. And Cruising says, how does a hospital gown wrapped in plastic expire? That's my question. I mean, I have a couple of boxes of that stuff laying around as part of the general prep. I don't recall ever seeing an expiration date on any of it. And Merv says, water, food, and resources, prepare or you will be eating dirt. Absolutely, Merv. You are correct. And WCM says, taxation is theft and extortion. And then Keisha says, I just have my my cat get whatever shots are required by law, like rabies. And Frankie says, I meant other countries, not here. Okay, send it to other countries. Yeah, donate it to Goodwill and write it off, and Goodwill will dump it in other countries because that's where all the clothing that they don't sell ends up. And ARN says, eat dirt and get worms. Worms are a good source of protein in an emergency, ARN. People eat worms. They make cookies, worm cookies. And WCM, of course, you know, my thing is taxation is not theft, it is extortion, because a thief just takes something from you once or twice. Extortion is when they make you give it to them or else. So yes, taxation is extortion. And it's a shame to see all that money wasted. That's your tax money again, once again. If it wasn't misused, misappropriated, misused, and misspent, they wouldn't need half as much as they take from us all the way around as far as taxes are concerned. It's it's absolutely disgusting the way that it's insulting. It's insulting the way that the money is wasted. They take it from you. You have no say in how it's spent, and they waste it. They waste it, and it's shameful. It really is. And with that, we're at the top of the hour. I'll go ahead and start wrapping things up. Again, this is Coffee Talk. So glad you could join us here today. You could find me on YouTube, Coffee Talk, or more specifically at Coffee Talk Live on YouTube or Prepper University, as well as at Coffee Talk Chat on X, formerly known as Twitter, and fistfulofradio.com. You can find Coffee Talk there, podcasting out of Atlanta Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon. Thanks again to everybody who was able to join us here this afternoon. As always, hope you got something out of the conversation. And we will see you again tomorrow.